and we are Philadelphia's classic rock 102.9 MGK. I am Andre Gardner. You know, I've been in the business, like 32 years. I've only ever had 2 guest DJs sit in with me during my show. The first one was the Beastie Boys. And boy, thank goodness they have those FCC rules back in those days. But today, I think we're going to not have a problem because I am so thrilled to be joined in the studio, taking over MGK for the next hour. Can we please have a big hand for little Steven? Woo! I can't believe you're here, man. Thank you so much for coming by.
I can't believe you're still on the air after the Beastie Boys.
Yeah, let me tell you, it was a tough night. But I'm glad you're here, and it's just so exciting to have you here. Of course, you got the Underground Garage on MGK Sunday nights from 10 to midnight. Does this mean that in addition to being the Renaissance man of rock and roll, you know, you do it all, you produce, you sing, you write, you play, are you a frustrated DJ?
Not anymore.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, I just celebrated 7 years on the air.
God bless you. And it's a great show, man.
Thank you, man.
Because in addition to playing some great songs that we know and love, you love exposing the audience to new rock and roll because not many people are doing that these days.
No, unfortunately, it's really a weird time. I think we have a format for everything right now except new rock and roll, which is a strange place to have gotten to, But we're doing our bit, so we have 2 hours a week at least. We hear the top 10 coolest new things from all around the world, plus all the cool old stuff, which is not making it that much onto the air either. The early Beatle tracks, Stones tracks, and Kinks and Yardbirds and things like that, as well as a lot of the great '50s things have been eliminated from the oldies format now. So it's hard to find what I call the Renaissance of rock and roll, which is the '50s and '60s, the best music ever made. It's still influencing everything that's going on today, and yet you can't find it. It's hard to find. You're an exception to the rule, of course, but
we try.
It's hard to find. To go across the country, we're the only ones playing Eddie Cochran, or Little Richard, or even the Clash, or the Stooges, or any of the new stuff. It's hard to find.
Now I've got so many questions, but I know you got to play some music because you brought a nice handsome stack with you. But last night's show, the first of 2 historic nights, the final nights at the Spectrum, it was a nice dedication that Bruce did for the Spectrum, calling it ideal. So I'll lead you in by talking about the label.
Yeah. And You Can't Sit Down. One of the fantastic records from, I don't know, 63 or 64, somewhere in there. Rolling Stones, from probably my favorite song of theirs from my favorite album, Around and Around, one of the 8 or 10 Chuck Berry covers they did, from 12 by 5, their second album, which only existed in America. It was made up by an American company and turned out to be one of their best albums. We played third. We played the Ramones, I think.
Oh, you did.
Which we also did the other night. Not in Philly, but we did. Yeah, we did.
By request.
Somewhere. Yeah, we've been taking requests. At first the request thing was like, obscure, Bruce songs, and now we've sort of gone to the next level of just total bar band, and it's great. They did I Want to Be Sedated by the great Ramones, of course, who you hear regularly in the Underground Garage. Unfortunately, not very many other places. Then we did Wild Thing, which we also played the other night. The Trogs, one of the Trogs, I don't know, 3 or 4 hits. They had like a dozen fantastic songs.
With A Girl Like You, one of my favorites.
Yeah, they're still around. Reg Presley and guitar player Chris Britton, they still play and they're still great. And then we ended with so we made it like a frat rock set and ended with one of our favorite frat rock tracks, which I don't know if we've ever played live, actually.
The great
and
one.
may never. But Crush on You from the river there, yeah.
Now, you talked about a bar band. I read this great review of the April 16th show you did at the LA Sports Arena, a guy named Neil Van Hart, and he described the ability of the E Street Band to take a 15, 20,000 seat venue and basically have the intimacy of a Jersey Shore bar.
That's our thing. I've been saying that for years. We take arenas and stadiums and turn them into clubs. But it's just it's a fun way of it's the only thing we know. You can take the kids out of the bar, but you can't take the bar out of the kids. And we continue to do that. You're playing to that couple thousand people, in front. So it's the same as a bar in that sense. The same thing we did at the Super Bowl. That's why we waited for 20 years to do it until they let us have the audience up close. It just changes everything. You're dealing with that same couple hundred people, whatever it is, in front that you would do in a bar, and so it makes it very intimate for people who are, you know, further back. You know, they feel the same closeness. You know. It's great. You know.
I can't believe Little Steven's taken over the radio station. This is beautiful. Little Steven, the E Street Band, our special guest here at Classic Rock 102.9 MGK. And I could almost devote 2 hours on the next subject, so I'll make it kind of quick. But you had an eye-opening, riveting address at the South by Southwest conference back in March, talking basically about the state of the music business and saying that we've been witnesses to a crisis of craft. And yet you've been very proactive in trying to change that with your own label, which is called Wicked Cool Records. So tell us a little bit about getting the label started.
Yeah. We were getting approached by the bands. We play a lot of international bands, and we started getting approached by them to start a label so they could have American distribution. You know, so that's how it began. That's why we have so many international bands on the label, and we decided, you know, just like with the radio show, you know, it's important for this generation to actually, you know, start to hear something that with higher standards. You know, I don't know how else to put it. You know, I'm sorry if that's not too diplomatic, but you know, I gotta tell it like it is. And you know, I think the general standards of our entire culture. I'm not even blaming the music business. I think our entire culture has dropped its standards, you know, precipitously low. And, you know, we're really in some trouble in terms of just how can people aspire to greatness if they don't hear it, if they're not exposed to it, you know. So we decided with the radio show just to play one great song after the other, you know, from history and as well as the best new stuff. And the same thing with the record label. You know, we want to have every song on every record be good, you know, no filler, you know. We lost the trust of the audience over the last 10 years by putting 2 good songs on records, you know, talking about the industry in general. We've never done this, but, you know, we would never put our name on something that wasn't great, you know, at least, you know, the best we could do at the time. So it's all about, you know, I started running into bands who were skipping the bar band stage of their careers, you know, skipping the club stage, going from writing songs in their, you know, in their rooms and their garages or whatever, and then next thing you know, they're making videos, or you know, they're on their own website, and you know, off they go into this career, but they left out the most important development stage, which is those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years in bars where you play other people's songs. Very important, you know. I mean, we did it for like 7 years, a little bit longer than most. The Beatles did it for 5 years. Stones for 3 years. You know, literally analyzing other people's songs, pulling them apart, putting them back together. That's how you learn.
There's almost kind of an arrogance with some of the younger bands about them sort of being above covering some of the old classics.
Yes, there is that attitude. And only in the last generation or two, you know. And it's because they've been abandoned. No one's teaching them any better. No one's showing them the way. And you know, there's no development in the industry. So how are they supposed to know? I don't blame the kids, you know. It's all become DIY, you know, very do-it-yourself, and, you know, nobody cares about anybody anymore. But that's led to this enormous amount of mediocrity that we're all drowning in, you know, and so that has to change. We have to learn how to write songs again, you know, we have to learn how to perform again, you know, and you do that in clubs and bars, you know, when you're young. And, you know, and you start sticking your own songs in between 2 other great songs, and it has to be better. You know, it has to, like, you know, hold up, at least be close, you know, to what you played before and what you played after it, you know, and that makes your writing better. You know, and that's how things develop. So we're not doing that anymore, and you know, that's what I talked about in that speech. But anyway, so we started the label, and one of our best new albums just came out this week, which we'll play something from it, huh? Should we do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's a group called Cocktail Slippers, an all-girl group from Norway, and I love the fact that it's carrying on the girl group tradition, and you know, it's a great tradition. Maybe we'll do a whole girl group set here, and these girls are, you know, they've been around for a few years, and they've managed to capture, I think, a little bit of the old, a little bit of the new, and the new album is called St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and this is the new single, In the City.
Right.